Hello, my name is Hakon and welcome back to my channel where today I'm doing a small tutorial again on the Empress Effects Zoia, the modular patchable digital synthesizer and effects box in a little stomp box format where the only limitation is your imagination and the CPU, of course. Today I'm going to show you something that might be something you may want to do with the Zoia as a new user. Now, when I got the Zoia, of course, the main thing I got it for was to use it for effects, for delay and reverb primarily. Other new users of the Zoia may also want that to be the main use of the pedal because the Empress Effects DSP for reverb and delay are actually really good, and it is worth it alone to buy the Zoia just to get the reverb and the delay, I think. But it can also do a lot of other things. But one of the things you may want to wonder about, of course, as a beginner, is how do you do something simple like, for instance, set up 3 different effects and then switch each of them on or off while you're playing. So that's what I'm going to show you today, one of the possible ways of doing just that. I've chosen to control this patch with the stomp switches. I could have used switches on the panel, I could have used a MIDI controller, but today I'm using the stomp switches. Now, in order to use the stomp switches as controllers for a patch, there is something you have to do first because they default to scrolling through patches, and by patches, of course, that means the ones in the patch storage on your SD card. Or the rightmost one is defaults to bypass. That is to say, it bypasses any programming in the Zoia, but if you have an audio input and an output, that will still be passed through. So in order for those 2 buttons to be used in the patch itself as controllers, you have to set the Zoia into performance mode. And the way you do that, it actually is in performance mode now, and you can see that by the fact that this shift button is lit up in the sky blue color, I think. Is that the sky blue or is it the turquoise? I'm not sure. Anyway, it lights up in a different color to the other navigation buttons. And the way you change whether the Zoia is in performance mode or not is by pushing down these 2 stomp switches simultaneously for a few seconds. So I do like this and it goes back to normal mode, and I do like this again and it goes back into performance mode. So that's how you do that. It needs to be exactly the same time, otherwise it will start bypassing and scrolling through patches. So same time, those 2 buttons. Right, so let's just have a quick listen to what I've got here. I'll just do like this now. So those were 3 different effects just to demonstrate, and I can switch them on or off with the stomp switches. I'll just go through the patch just to show you how this is set up now, just to show you the functionalities of it. So first of all, I've got an oscillator here, which I've just set to a random frequency, 151.92 Hertz, just random. The output of the oscillator, oh, by the way, it is in triangle wave, which is the one I use the most. It's a pleasing sound, not too boringly sine wavy and not too harsh sawtooth. Very nice for demonstrating things on the Zoia. Now the output of the oscillator goes into a VCA, and the output of the VCA goes to 3 different effects here. So first it goes into a delay, and the output of the delay goes into a vibrato, and the output from the vibrato goes into a plate reverb. And I've set it up so that the first effect here is, because I have a mono signal coming in, the first effect is a single input and 2 outputs, and the other one are set up for 2 inputs and 2 outputs. And after that, at the end of that signal chain, the reverb, it goes to the left and right audio output up here. The VCA is controlled by an ADSR envelope here, and the ADSR envelope, the gate input, is controlled by an LFO here, and that is the sound producing part of the patch. The rest of the patch is for controlling the stump switches, as for switching the effects on and off, and also to create the visual feedback as well that I've just made here, just to make it very visible whether an effect is on or off. If you're using it as a stomp box on the floor, of course, it's nice to get that clear visual feedback as well. So, and another thing, because I don't have a bypass switch now to switch the sound off, I have created a switch here which switches the sound on or off. And interestingly, of course, this switch here works the same way as the stump switches technically now, for how it creates the effect of switching something on or off. Okay, so how do we set this up? Well, first of all, we need to create the inputs for the stump switches. So they are here. So there's one for each of the 3 ones. And they are set up as latching. So see, when I push this, it goes off. When I push it again, when I push it again, it comes on like so. And the same for the middle one and the last one. And I've set it up now so that when these switches are on is when the effect is off. So it's a bypass switch. Which direction you do it, whether you switch it on or off for the effect to be on, is entirely up to you. The principle is the same. And each of these switches go into an inverter, and I'll get back to why I am putting that signal into an inverter. It's just the way I chose to do it now. And also, let's see. Yeah, I'll just show you first of all the inverters. They go into each of 3 value modules here, and they also go to each of the effects. And of course, all the effects on the Zoia, regardless of what they are, have one of the things you can control in the effect is how much of that effect is active. So for the delay, it is the mix that is the controller for how much of the delay is active. And if that is at 0, then everything that passes through here is just a normal signal. And for the next module, the vibrato, it has a vibrato width, which, of course, it could have picked another one, but I picked the width. When the width is at 0, then it has no effect. And for the reverb, again, it's the mix that, when it's 0, just passes the audio through. And those are the ones that are controlled now to the inverters. So basically what happens is, I've got some kind of setting here in the delay. I'll just go in here and push. So now the delay is technically on now. I haven't put the sound on. And mix 40 is the setting in the delay. But when I push this button, what happens is this switch, which is connected to the button here, that's the input for the button, gets a value of 1. That value of 1 goes into an inverter, and an inverter outputs the opposite value of the input. So it gets the value of 1 in, it outputs a value of -1, and that -1 is sent to the mix. So regardless of what the value is set to in the module now, even if the value is 1, which is the maximum, and when you add the -1, it will always go down to 0. And that is how this patch works. It's a very easy way to zero out a value by sending it a value of -1 from a switch. So that is how it works. That's the principle of it. And it's exactly the same for the other controls, the vibrato width and the plate reverb mix. And the visual effect, I'll just show you now. So now it is, when the effect is off, I've got the red showing and that's a delay there, vibrato, reverb. Are all of them on at the same time. So the way this works, or maybe I should do the, so the sound on-off switch has exactly the same principle. So this is a push button that sends its value to, hang on. To an inverter. Hang on, where is it? There it is. Yes, okay. So it sends its value to this inverter here, and the output of that inverter is sent to the VCA level control, which is of course the one that is connected to the ADSR. But because regardless of what value is there because of the ADSR, when it gets the value of -1 in, it will always go down to 0, which is minus infinite decibels, which means it is off. So exactly the same principle as the other ones. Now, the visual feedback, which I think is quite nice. These are all UI buttons, user interface buttons. An interesting thing about a user interface button is you can change the color of them dynamically. In the user manual, there is a list of color codes for these buttons, and a value of 0.0374 is actually 375. That is maximum brightness red. And the easiest way to set up the colors here is to first create all the UI buttons and then create a value module, and that's what I've done here. That sends out, actually now, I've actually set the green as the default value now. Okay, so this is the, so if you now see this value model has a value of 0.2875, which corresponds to bright green. And that is connected to all of these. And this is easier to use a value module than to set the value for each of these single modules separately. And also that means you can control all of them together as well. So that's the easiest way to do it. One value module connects to all of them, and this is a method of working that is very useful in other patches too. When you are sending the same value to many places, it's easier to do it via a value module rather than connecting things directly. So this value model sends a value of 0.2875 to all of these. And then when I push a button, I want it to change the value to 0.0374. The difference between 0.2875 and 0.0374 is 0.25, which means that, and I want to reduce it by 0.25 when I push a button. So that means it has to be a negative value. So I take the output from the inverter, which now has a value of -1, and I connect it to this value module here with a connection strength of 25%. That means that when I push, let's go in here now, when this button is pushed, that means this value module has a value of -0.25. If I push this button, it goes back to 0, -0.25, and the output of that is sent to all of these pixels here, which visualize the leftmost effect control, whether it's on or off. So when I push this button, the values here in the UI buttons go down by 0.25, which changes the color from bright green to bright red. And there's a separate value module here for each of the 3 buttons, each connected to the inverters here, that is connected to each of the button inputs here. And they all have a connection strength of 25%, so that they change the color like so. So a very nice way of doing it, and you can do this for any kind of module, of course. If you want a visual feedback, this is a nice way of doing it. And that is pretty much it. And that's how it works. That's the visual feedback. That is how you switch them on or off, by controlling the part of the module that sets the level of effect, which is different things for different modules. They don't all have a mix control, for instance. So depending on what module it is you're using, it will be different things that will change the effect to 0, but there is always something in the module that is setting the effect to 0, and if you send it a -1 value, it will go down to 0 regardless of what other value might be there before. Unless, of course, you change it dynamically in a way that means the value could be higher than 1 at the same time. Of course, if that is the case, you could increase the connection strength and make absolutely sure that you get a value that is lower, just in case. Because I do believe that the Zoia, for some values internally, it actually works with values higher than 1 or lower than -1. There have been other patches where that has seemed to be the case, so that is a possibility. But most cases, 99% of cases, you should be fine if this is how you want to work with your patch to send the value of -1. So that's it for today. If you found this useful, inspiring, or otherwise any of the principles of this patch is something you will find useful in your own patches, then please let me know. Please also like, share, subscribe, join me on Patreon if you want to see more videos from me about this or other things. And I will see you again in my next video, which will be about the Zoia or about something else entirely. Thank you for watching. Goodbye for now.